And I think sometimes as marketers, we have this perspective where like, we want to disrupt, we want to like break through and grab attention. And kind of like the opposite philosophy is true in gaming, because you've already got their attention. You've already got a really highly engaged audience. So you actually want a brand and an ad experience that fits really seamlessly into that experience itself. It's less that they don't like ad experiences within games. They don't like bad ad experiences within games, And so there is a distinction there.
Get your content right.
Exactly. Get that experience right.
It's time again for Brands in Play. I'm Nick Hill, co-founder and chief innovation officer at Sawhorse.
And I'm Albane Prioux, Insights and Partnership Director at Geek.
Look at these headlines we got this week. Roblox breaks 100 million daily active users. Milk leverages anime to reach Gen Z. The PwC's new entertainment and media analysis report is out, and ad tech company Overwolf doubles its ad sales to 100 million in 2024.
And with this in mind, we also have Claire Nance, the head of gaming business success strategy at Activision Blizzard, to tell us more about how brands can win at scale through paid media inside gaming.
Looking forward to that. And if you like what you hear, why not subscribe and drop a comment? We'd love to hear from you. All right, let's get into it.
Hello, Nick. How are you doing?
I am well. How are you?
Well, pretty good. I think there's a lot to talk about for sure this week, and I think I'll kick things off with Roblox earnings that came out. So that's their Q2 25 earnings documents that came out, and it's super positive. I think we knew from the last quarter that they were going to hit 100 million very quickly, but I think Grow a Garden really helped here. So they are now out of over 100 million daily active users. It's 111.8 million active users. And it's really exciting to see. So that's 14% increase since the last quarter. So it's massive. I think they can say a huge thank you to Grow a Garden. I feel like this was the things that made the growth so high. But also, I think something that I wanted to highlight that was really interesting here was there's always, again, I think every time I see those quarterly releases, there's always something that jumps to me is the number of daily active users are over 13. Because there's still, I think, amongst advertisers, marketers, the misinterpretation that Roblox is a 8-year-old platform, but the data doesn't lie. So what we are seeing is that actually year on year, the number of over 13 daily active users has increased by 50%. So out of the 111 million, 71, so over 71 are are over 13. So this is a huge addressable audience for marketers. Whether you're doing paid media on Roblox or whether you're creating your own experiences, doing integration, there's a large audience that is relevant for brands within Roblox. And the last thing before I hear your thought, Nick, again, for the skepticals are saying, yes, okay, they have like a large number of daily active users, but the people that are spending the most times are still the 8-year-olds because they're the one with time. Again, another myth that's being debunked. So while the number of hours on Roblox has increased by 26%, so we're now at 27 billion hours, 18.2 billion of these hours are by the over 13. So again, another, like, not only are the over 13 growing in terms of percentage, but they're also spending a lot more time and are the largest percentage of spend time on the platform. So really exciting for advertising and marketers. But what did you think? What did you see any other stats that I didn't mention?
No, you caught all the big stats. Obviously, I was excited to see this because we do so much work on Roblox. We want to keep this growing. It's been growing. Every report over the past couple years has just been on a skyrocket. I actually thought that it might not, or plateau, or maybe even take a tiny dip, just because it's how long can this thing be at that
Oh, yeah.
skyrocket growth? But I mean, they're proving to do so. So I was excited to see it. Very interesting about the 13 plus demo and how that's growing. I think there's still, like you mentioned, there's this stigma where people don't necessarily believe it. I mean,
Yeah.
that is the data, but it's I think a lot of older people in advertising, they don't see a lot of older people in the 13 plus, 16, 20. They don't see that group of people using the platform. So it's hard for them to make the connection, but it appears that the data is pointing to that.
Yeah, absolutely. What's next for you?
So for me, my story is all about milk, the milk industry in the United States. They're leveraging anime to reach Gen Z. And I thought this was just a really interesting article. The Milk Association has actually done really impressive marketing over the years. If you're familiar with the Got Milk campaign, I don't know if that made its way to the UK,
Of
but
course, it's
yeah,
I've well, maybe because I studied marketing, but Got Milk is like iconic. It's an iconic
classic.
advert.
Yeah, and I feel like that was amazing in the 90s, and then I think, after that, I don't remember any, like, revolutionary, like, milk campaigns. Although, like, in the past few years, I think they're starting to really kind of, like, have a resurgence and really, like, reach younger generations. So this new campaign is a US-based campaign, called Milk Can Help, and so it's like a funny, humorous, anime-inspired spot that's showing what milk can and can't do. So it's talking
Mhm.
about it can help you build muscles and height. It can't stop, for instance, like a kaiju attack. So it's like this fun spot. It's fully done in anime style. The agency behind it was Gale, and it was made by the award-winning animation studio Nexus. So I
Oh,
mean, the top-notch group behind this. But what's interesting is they distributed this directly to Gen Z audiences and anime fans. So they did like a page takeover on Crunchyroll, which is the top streaming anime site
yeah.
out there, and they also ran spots on TikTok and Snapchat.
Really
It,
interesting.
it's super interesting, and I think they made a lot of impact. There was a survey that happened last year by Vox that found out that 42% of Gen Z watches anime every single week, which is just a massive statistic. And I guess in general, like the milk sales have been in decline over the past few years, and now they're just seeing an uptick now. So I think this may be related to some of these cool marketing efforts that they've done. And also, as we know, last year, Milk did their big campaign with Fortnite, with the Milk Cup tournament featuring all female players across the country, which is pretty cool. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
I love this. I think it's really interesting that it's you know what, it's never a product. Being French and a love of dairy, I never can imagine that you need to advertise for, milk. But it's just really interesting that even, in that kind of industry, they still need to be able to like appeal to a new audience. And I find it really for such a like a old product. They could have done, out of home TV, etc. And I think it's great that they are looking at where their audience is and like tapping into an area of fandom like anime. I didn't know about the 42% of Gen Z are watching anime, but it puts a little bit of context of why Louis Vuitton has done that recently, and also Hermes has tapped into the anime art style to be able to engage with their audience. So kudos to them. I think this is really cool that they're like rethinking how they do content around their own products. I think this is really exciting.
And I will say, when I was in high school, I think it was maybe 0.4% of the Gen Z was watching anime. It was not
Right?
cool.
Yeah,
Made fun of me when I was in school because of that. So that's definitely changed.
that's
But
cool.
what do you got?
My last news is PwC that released their new report on the, I guess, health of the entertainment and media industry, and something that I think we speak about a lot of gaming being bigger than the film and music industry combined, and I think this is something that was again reflected within their report. Good news is that the market on its own is growing by 5%. But something that I thought was really relevant and I think aligned with the conversation that we're going to have shortly with Claire is the size, I guess, of advertising and how much of the percentage of the revenue is going to be driven by advertising versus consumer. So they're currently forecasting by 2020, in the next 5 years, sorry, that 55% of the revenue just generated by entertainments is going to be through advertising. So we know that,
Mm,
Disney Plus, Netflix, Amazon Primes, they're all rolling out ads subscriptions where you have like, I guess, a fraction of the price of the subscription as long as you're watching ads. But this is something that they also are seeing within video games. So they're actually looked at what is currently in terms of revenue and within video game, what is attributed to consumers versus ads. So at the moment, it's 68% of the revenue that the video game industry is generated directly from consumers. So that could be your microtransaction or buying for the game itself or hardware, etc. But they are forecasting that it's going to to be a large portion of that that's going to shift towards ads in the next, also in the next 5 years. So by 2029, they're forecasting that 38%. So it's still not a majority, but it is a large increase of the revenue is going to be towards ads. Now, that means it doesn't mean that consumers are not going to spend more. It just means that in terms of where the growth and where we're going to see that growth coming is going to be less on the consumer side and more on advertisers realizing that they can tap at scale audiences that are valuable by utilizing paid media.
Well, I love to see this report because it really kind of verifies, what we think and what we see as the direction that all these ad dollars are moving. And so, I think it validates that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more reports of this as this solidifies.
Absolutely. What do you have next?
Yeah, so my last story is all about the ad tech company Overwolf and how they have doubled their in-game ad sales to
Mhm.
100 million in 2024. And obviously, we had Yuri, the CEO from Overwolf, on the show a few weeks ago, which was great. But this is pretty substantial, in my opinion, because basically their revenue grew from 50 million in 23 to 100 million in 24 and growing. And the platform itself has a reach of over 100 million monthly active users across more than 1,500 games that are in their network. They paid out 240 million into the community of in-game creators for their contributions. That's very substantial. And they're also seeing a ton of huge growth around the rewarded achievement campaigns or rewarded ads. And I wanted to get your take on this. Like, what is your take on rewarded ads and rewarded video?
Well, I think we'll speak about it with Claire, but I'm a big believer that the opportunity that you have when you're distributing ads within games is that there is an opportunity of exchanging value, where I think, it kind of like it pains me a little bit when I'm buying for like a Disney subscription and I still need to see ads. I'm paying, and on top of that, I just still need to watch ads. I just find the model, I think, of like existing streaming platform of social media to be flawed. Where I think in gaming, a lot of these services are free. So I think that's the model of like a lot of free to play or UGC platform, where in order for this to be free to play, either you're going to have a large model that's based on microtransaction or it's going to be on ads. But the way that you make this a little bit more incentivized for players is by providing value. And I think that's how your ad can be a little bit more like have a larger view rate, or like at least completion rate, because you want to be able to watch it until the end so you can get your reward.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're just looking at the concept of a standard ad and it being intrusive, if you can add a reward to it, it becomes less intrusive and more valuable. But I still think conceptually it's kind of like bad in a way because it's almost like if you sit through this, I will give you something. So while you're sitting through it, it's kind of like, hmm.
But
And if we,
this is where you need to make sure the targeting is right, because you're right. If you're distributing the ads to people that don't care and already are not going to be your target audience, then it's just like it's unqualified, I would say, viewers. But if you are targeting them properly, so I think it's more of the platform to be able to provide the granularity of targeting that we're seeing on Meta and on Google, so that you're talking to the right audience, and on top of that you're adding value of like of the
yeah.
attention of that person. But I agree with you, if it's just like pure distribution and people actually are not watching your ads because they care, just because they want their freebies, it kind of defeats the point. It needs to be like something more because you're
Yeah.
already into your addressable audience.
The targeting is huge. It makes way more sense and
Yeah.
relevancy. But this whole Overwolf article is so interesting to me because there was also a report that came out that by Dentsu recently
Hmm.
talking about how the video game industry draws less than 5% of the global ad spend,
I saw that.
despite having 3.4 billion players. Obviously, there's an imbalance there, and there needs to be more ad spend happening within gaming. And just this proof of seeing Overwolf double like that, the amount of ad spend happening is I think an indicator that we're going to see a lot more. So that's why
Yeah,
I brought this article up.
I agree. It's great, and I think we'll speak to Claire about it, and she'll tell us all about how brands can, I guess, engage at scale by utilizing their ad model.
Nice.
But
But moving
before
on next, we've got our real-time review, and I think
exactly,
it's your week. So what
it
are
is
we
my week.
looking at
Yes,
today?
this is my first one. And before we talk to Claire and deep dive into the solution for brands and how they can activate within some of the leading games and mobile games like Candy Crush, let's go into real time review.
Let's go.
Okay, so for this week, so this week is my turn, and I've picked one. I don't know. Have you followed the Women Euro Cup this year?
I haven't. I'm a
Okay.
novice.
So very proud to say that the Lioness, so the English team, the women English team has won. So this is obviously everyone was in front of their TV and we're super proud of the team. The UEFA has already done, so while the championship was happening, they've done a partnership already with Adidas, if I'm not mistaken. But what I thought was really clever, so for this one, they created post the finale and post the cup an experience that's their own experiences on Roblox where people can replay highlights moments of the cup. So what I really liked about this when you arrive, so this was done by in collaboration with UEFA and their agency. So there was MC Saatchi Sport and Entertainment London, and the purpose essentially is for fans to be able to engage with the key highlights that's happened during every match. So when you arrive, you select the match that you want to relive or replay, and they show you moments within that match. So it's all recreated like for like. And I think I'll show you the videos,
Mm.
but you can essentially see the real life moments that has been like for like recreated in a Roblox 3D format, a bit like Squid Game and the trailer, except that it's like the football match. So I think that's something that I thought was really interesting, where there's an opportunity with Roblox to be able to harness fandom post a sport moment, or bring a little bit more like love to a specific team. So I thought that was really smart for the UEFA to not just do an integration, but actually launch their own experiences for nourishing in between those really big moments of sport, to be able to nourish the fandom by allowing people that maybe missed the match or might not know that much about soccer, because I know like in the US, and we know that Roblox is more US focused, they might not know about the UEFA Women's Cup. So I just thought that was like a really smart activation for them to look at Roblox as a potential avenue to make the sport more known. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is that when you arrive, so you are on an empty pitch, and all around there you still have the ad sponsors, like all of their sponsors from. So you had Adidas on there, you had Lidl, you had actually UFC, which I thought was quite interesting to have another game within Roblox. So it really felt like you were in that replay pitch. So it was overall like really beautiful. But, and you can imagine that there is a but, there was a lot of things that I think were a big miss for UEFA. First and foremost, I feel like they haven't really thought, and I really encourage you, Nick, to like go into it. But there was not really like a longevity plan here. And I think when you think about how you can harness fandom, I feel like their strategy here was a little bit confused. So all you could do was essentially select a match, rewatch it, and it is quite interesting because the novelty is quite cool. You can be with the players. You're not a player yourself, so you're just watching those avatars replaying the moment.
What was the performance?
It's not. It's only releasing this week, so it's
Okay.
under 1 million right now, which is not great. But it's still very new, and I'll talk about it. But I can talk about it now. They've only done one promotional video, and it was all on Facebook. So I just felt like there was a lot of confusion on why would you post on Facebook content for Roblox when we know that it's on TikTok that community watches content, or even on YouTube. None of that content was published on these platforms. I just felt like they could have added a little bit more layers around the players themselves. Like, it's very hard to know which team is from where, what player is who. And I think that's how you also create fandom. So there's a lot of characters within the Lioness teams that are incredible. Like the one that allowed us to win, she is, training, but also going to school. So there's a lot of like really cool stories that you can tell around the players that I think they could have brought to life to just bring a lot more fandom and make people watch essentially their games. But I still thought that was quite an interesting like effort. But I think I'm just let's see how it plays out, and maybe we're still like early days of them, launching this, and maybe this is a soft launch. They don't want to be too loud about this, but yeah, that was my real time review and my take on this one.
Well, thanks for that review. That's interesting. My perspective on it is I just think that without any core loop or deep gamification, the audience is just not going to connect with it. I agree with, it's a bit innovative. It's cool to pop in there and watch it, but after you watch like one or two, I don't see why you would come back. So
No.
let's see how it performs.
Yeah, exactly. But without further ado, let's speak to Claire.
Awesome.
We're delighted to welcome Claire Nance, Head of Gaming Business Success Strategy at Activision Blizzard Media. Claire brings a wealth of insight to this space with over 15 years of experience at the intersection of advertising, tech, and entertainment. She has helped many brands achieve success through Activision's ad solution, and we're incredibly excited to deep dive into how brands can win by advertising inside gaming. Claire, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Very excited to be here. Love talking gaming and ads. So let's do it.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you to be here because this is such a topic that a lot of brands are asking more about. So I think maybe to kick things off, I'd love to know more about your background and maybe specifically what your role is, what your team does within Activision Blizzard, because I know this is such a large company.
Yeah, of course. So I work within the advertising business within Activision Blizzard. And so really what my job boils down to is really helping to educate brands, marketers, advertisers on gaming and helping them understand the gaming ecosystem and how they can think about activating within gaming. And then of course, like how Activision Blizzard media kind of fits within that. But it's really this like acting as like this educator and almost like a translation layer between the two industries. And that education goes both ways because there's also the internal education on the gaming side of the house and helping them understand the ad industry and what it is that, media buyers are looking for and how we should think about bringing new solutions to life. So that's kind of how I think about my role in a nutshell, is really this kind of education and translation layer.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like we all educate brands constantly. There's a lot of education calls, which can be a double-edged sword. But I want to talk about the total addressable audience that you have, like the gaming audience and beyond the demographics. What are these players like? And what's the difference between this audience and like the standard like social media audience?
Yeah, I think like one of the biggest things to understand with the gaming audience is just how big it is. And I think that can get really lost. There's this stereotype of the teenage boy in the basement with a headset on, like that I think really comes to mind as a very, striking visual image. But 80% of folks in the US are playing video games. That is a very large piece of the population. And when you have such a large audience, it is only natural that you're going to have real diversity within that audience group. And so that's really one of the things that we see when we think about the audience is like it's very diverse. And it's diverse, in terms of like the demographic piece. Again, to kind of like break down that stereotype a little bit more, about 50% of the gaming audience is female. But it's also diverse in terms of motivations, platforms that they're playing across, how they play, how they're engaging with gaming. That's very, very different across, kind of the different audience groups within this gaming subset. We often talk about gaming audiences and it's not a monolith. There really is that diversity there. So when we think about the comparison to social media audiences, I would say that candidly, there's a lot of crossover. A lot of people who are gaming are also on social media. They're also, consuming other forms of entertainment. But it's just, I think, really understanding that the gaming audience itself is much bigger than I think we've traditionally thought it to be, where in the past we've thought it as being very much this kind of this niche subset of an audience.
Yeah, and of course, I agree with you, and I think it's important to to mention that there's a crossover, but also if they're not spending time on social media, then that is eyeballs that brands are losing essentially because they are within those games. So maybe can you tell us a
Absolutely.
little bit more about your ad solution? And for marketer, like you were mentioning that you're upskilling them on what marketers need. So can you tell us more as well about maybe the portfolio of games that you have, and how a brand can activate the different types of formats for different types of objective? Give us a bit of an overview of like how can brands activate with you guys?
Yeah, I think, I'll talk through a bit of a taxonomy that we think about broadly, when it comes to gaming ads, and then I can go more specifically into our portfolio. And, I think the gaming ecosystem is very complex, and I
Mhm.
think that can be really intimidating for brands if they haven't activated in this space before, because there's a bit of this like, where do I start? And so, like, a kind of simple way to think about it is through this idea of you can activate within the game, you can activate adjacent to the game, and you can activate outside of the game. And so, in the game is what you see, if you think of like a car racing game with the billboards, that very kind of traditional, like, gaming ad experience, like an actual ad within the game itself. The adjacent to the game is, you might be playing a game and in a break between a level, there's an ad experience. And so that's often you see that in mobile where you might be, you finish a level, you watch an ad, you maybe get a reward and you continue on. And then outside of the game is things like streaming, esports, content creation, anything that's really happening like completely outside of the game experience itself. And so I think that's a really useful framework just to kind of start to understand what is quite a complex entertainment ecosystem. For us at Activision Blizzard Media, we kind of have three core platforms that we kind of offer solutions on. The first and the biggest one is mobile. And, Candy Crush is one of our biggest titles. It has, been around for over 10 years at this point. I think it might be 13 years. It is such a
Yeah.
ubiquitous gaming title. And so what is so great about mobile is that it offers, reach and scale. The mobile is so accessible. There isn't that upfront kind of investment in like a gaming system or what have you. We all have, mobile phones. We have a gaming, platform in our pocket essentially. And so the type of ad experiences we have in the mobile space is things like rewarded videos. So I kind of talked about that earlier when that adjacent to the game. That's where you watch an ad, or it might be a playable format where you're actually playing like a little mini game, and then you're rewarded for your time with like an in-game booster, sometimes as a real life reward as well. So that's kind of the most popular and accessible kind of formats that we offer. We also offer on console. So on the Xbox dashboard, there are, kind of ad units where you can click through to the store. We work primarily with game and entertainment publishers. That's really popular there, for that type of experience. And then the third piece is on PC. And so Microsoft casual games, and specifically Solitaire, which again, talking about ubiquitous gaming titles, I think almost everybody has played Solitaire at some point. We also have a rewarded video offering on that platform too. So for us, it's really important that we have an offering that expands these different platforms. Because when I talked about earlier about, the audience being so broad and people interacting and with, gaming in very different ways, and they do so very, in these different ways across these multiple platforms.
Nice. So let's talk about the actual ads themselves from the creative
Yeah.
standpoint. What
Yeah.
really resonates with this gaming audience? We do know that these younger generations crave authenticity. They don't like being sold to. So what are the best practices that you tell brands when they're like, "Oh, I want to
Yeah.
run a spot over here"?
Yeah, I think really this idea of seamlessness is really, really important when we think about kind of in-game, in gaming activations. And I think sometimes as marketers, we have this perspective where like we want to disrupt, we want to like break through and grab attention. And kind of like the opposite philosophy is true in gaming, because you've already got their attention. You've already got a really highly engaged audience. So you actually want a brand and an ad experience that fits really seamlessly into that experience itself. I think, when we think about like what best practice looks like, I think really matching the ad experience to the game and prioritizing that, to make sure that it fits really nicely within that environment. And then also being really clear about, KPIs and objectives,
Hmm.
and who your audience is, because that is really going to help guide you to find the right type of experience. You can have something as simple as I said, a rewarded video type ad experience in a mobile game to a, really bespoke virtual world that's built out in a console game. And so I think like really knowing what your objectives are and what it is that you're trying to do and achieve with the experience will help you determine what type of ad experience you should look for. But I think very much this idea of seamlessness, not disrupting, feeling kind of organic to the gameplay experience is what is most impactful.
If you could tell us a little bit more about what those rewarded ads are and what does that mean in this context?
Yeah, so I think a few things. One, we've done a lot of research into how audiences respond to ads within games. And one of the things we found is that it's less that they don't like ad experiences within games. They don't like bad ad experiences within games. And so there is a distinction
Get
there.
your content right.
Exactly. Get that experience right. And I think the other thing I will say for us as we think about how do we balance the kind of, commercial sensitivities with the gameplay experience is that we are a gaming studio and publisher first and foremost, and so we work very closely with our studio teams as we're bringing products to life. And I will say they have an incredibly high bar for the types of ad experiences they will let us put in the games. And I say that as a good thing. Because what that means is we're not going to have experiences that are disruptive. It's going to be, again, like seamless to the play. And it's going to fit really nicely into the game experience, which is going to have a really good result for the player. And so we think about something like rewarded video, and I'll use Candy Crush as the example. First of all, the ad experience is opt-in. So you as the player have choice about whether you want to engage with the ad experience or not. And I think that's really critical too with a medium like gaming where you are already kind of in control. Like gaming is a very immersive and interactive experience. So you're giving some of that to the player. You're giving them that choice in terms of whether they want to engage with an ad experience or not. They finish a level, they choose to watch the ad experience. They watch the 30-second ad and then they're rewarded for that time. So again, that value exchange of they're getting something in exchange for, participating in the ad experience. In Candy Crush, it's usually a color bomb, helps them, be able to complete future levels. And again, what we see is there's a lot of positive, response to that because players want to get color bombs. They want to be able to complete the levels more quickly, and the ad experience allows them to do that.
I'd love to, I guess, now highlight some of the case studies that you've done on if you have any anonymized case study that you want to talk about or any specific one that you can highlight on, what can success looks like when someone or brand is advertising with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite case studies to talk about, we did with Candy Crush and the Prada candy fragrance. And
That's a great one.
right off the bat, you're already seeing like Prada candy, Candy Crush, like what a beautiful alignment there, in terms of the brands. But we worked with Prada Candy to create a playable mini game within Candy Crush. And we actually used kind of the Candy Crush look and feel to create this mini game. And we made little Prada candy perfume bottles, but in the Candy Crush kind of art style. And so it was a memory kind of mini game, and you played the mini game and you got not only an in-game reward, but you also were able to access a free sample of the fragrance. And so we had, I think, 40,000 samples to give away over the whole campaign. We gave away those samples within 24 hours. That's how successful that campaign was. It drove 1,800% website traffic increase on the Prada Candy website. And so I think like this is such a great example of when you've got that really nice like fit. I talked a little bit earlier about prioritizing the ad experience that matches the game. You've got Prada Candy and Candy Crush. You're bringing some of that IP to life with the Candy Crush IP. It's a really fun experience. The mini game is fun to play. And then you've got that reward at the end of it. And so you kind of bring all these elements together and you can see just how successful an activation can be.
That's amazing. I love that activation. You guys crushed it on that.
Yeah, it's one of
pun
my
intended.
favorites. Yeah. Candy Crushing it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Claire, thank you so much. Honestly, it was such a pleasure to
pleasure.
deep dive into the topic of media buying within gaming. I think this is a topic that a lot of brands are asking themselves at the moment, or like how
Yeah.
do you do performance metrics within gaming. So I really appreciate your time. A lot of insights today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Claire. All right. And we're back. That was awesome hanging out with Claire and getting her point of view. I really loved how she doubled down on that concept that players don't really mind ads inside of games if they're done right and if they're relevant and if they're adding value. And it's just a reminder that this can really be a win-win for brands and advertisers and players if it's thoughtful, because you have so much control on how to target, how to integrate, and how to add value. If you are serious about that, it can actually be a very positive experience across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. And I think this is something that we spoke about throughout this episode is the appetite and I think the missed opportunity for advertisers to distribute their ads through programmatics or engaging directly with the platform to just distribute the content that you have on these platforms. And I think what's really interesting is like not only has Activision done this for a really long time, is that we're seeing platforms like UGC platforms like Roblox, but I'm sure Meta is going to have a similar model in the future. That a lot of these platforms are going to take a ad model in the future. I think we're seeing that, and the report from PwC I think is indicating around it, where you always will have the content like we always have in those UGC platforms, but for a lot of brands, the scalable maybe solution is more going to be at least the paid media side. So I think it's quite interesting to see maybe more advertisers like thinking about it and thinking like what is our ad distribution plan for gaming.
Yeah, yeah. I think she did a really good job of
Yeah.
kind of explaining the opportunity and the landscape for all these brands. So, and now it's time to jump into our next segment, Hit, Miss, Bet.
Let's do it. So it's on me this week as well to tell you a little bit more about what is my hit, miss, and bet. So my hit has been Reddit, where recently they've again their earnings, quarterly earnings has come out, and we've seen a huge increase on their stock share, so growing by 15%. This is due to their revenue growing by 78%. So this is
Damn.
massive for a platform like Reddit. To put into context though, so their daily active users have hit 110 million. So this is the same as Roblox. So again, I think we always think about Reddit being this massive platforms, but it's now at the same daily active users as Roblox. So just really interesting. I think when we think about the growth of Roblox, I just thought it was quite interesting to like put this into context. But why I think Reddit is a hit and is going to continue to be a hit, is that when we think about LLM and all of the like those new engine like Claude, ChatGPT, they love forums, and we actually are seeing Reddit really positioning themselves as this new strategic partner for Google and ChatGPT. And most recently, they've mentioned that they are already hinting towards a deal licensee for their content to be able to help Google and ChatGPT train on their platform. So I thought I'm really bullish on Reddit. I think this model of, user consumption and people's own opinion is going to be really vital for those AIs to be able to provide more value to their users. So really bullish on Reddit, and I think we're already seeing that with their share prices going up.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
my
it,
that's my hit.
yeah, that definitely is a hit. It seems like they're positioned in such a way to continue to succeed,
Yeah.
for all the reasons that you mentioned. So yeah, I'm also bullish.
Yeah, super bullish. Miss, and I think I'm keen because I honestly I'm torn between like what the deal is about. Is the American Eagle new adverts with Sydney Sweeney. I don't know if you saw it, but there's a lot of polemic around it. So it's the tagline is Sydney Sweeney has great genes. So it's a play on word, obviously, between like the genes and like her genes. And there's been a lot of controversy and a lot of backlash around it, mentioning that, it promoted eugenics and it was not like, it just didn't promote like the right message. And I think to the point where even on social people were saying that it was like a Nazi message, which I thought was like really pushing it. But I don't know. I thought to be honest, I don't have much of a thought on it. I just thought it's definitely a mess. I'm just seeing a lot of people like on social, at least creating content and raising the fact that they just thought the message was just not aligned. I think, to be honest, I just think like the brand and also the agency that must be behind it knew that it was going to be controversial and probably were expecting this to become big and viral because of this of like this play on words. I just don't know if, at the end of it's just an advert. I don't know. I think there's a part of me that feels like this bigger fight to take if we really want to have like a change, than like going after an American ads. But I don't know if you saw it.
I
What's
saw it.
this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a little tone deaf, to be honest. Anytime you're gonna release something like that and you want that controversy so you can get attention, you don't want to align it with race. I don't think. And I feel like this would be different if it wasn't a white woman,
That's right.
with
I
blonde
think
hair and blue
maybe the
eyes.
casting. I think her casting was just very poor.
And I think people may be overreacting, but in general, it's like, I don't know. It's just a little tone deaf on the
I think
brand, in my opinion.
there's a part of me that's like, ugh, it's just the bad ads. But I don't know. I just don't. I think there's like more fights for us to go after at the moment than it's just not like it doesn't add anything, and it just felt like a very as you said, like, I don't know, just an ad. I don't know. I just
Well,
felt
they
like,
got us talking about it, so
yeah,
I
they got us
guess
talking about it.
there you
Uh,
go. Still a
well,
miss, though, in my opinion.
100% still a miss. But I just felt like, I don't know. I just would rather us paying attention on and trying to like make a change in areas where we can actually have an impact than just trying to cancel American Eagle. I think
Yeah,
there's other
dealing with
stuff
bigger
where
fish to fry. More shit
yeah,
that
and I
really
think there's like
matters.
this polemy and this policies where we can actually like fight to make a change. If we look at like our government or anything like that, I think there's like ways for us to make an actual change than just like spending so much energy talking about American Eagle. But I agree with you. I think the casting was quite poor, and like in general, like the tagline. I think the whole advert, I will say, like, go watch it, is heavily sexualized as well, and it's just like another way of like portraying a woman in a very sexualized way.
Yeah,
Which I just think like a lot of it was just like not.
it's a fail,
Yeah.
straight up.
The last thing, my bets, probably more related to Reddit again, is that I'm expecting for those forum-based companies to become a lot more relevant and actually seeing a huge spike in growth. And my last bet is going to be actually on Discord, potentially joining the conversation and doing this partnership with OpenAI and Google. Because if we think about sub-communities and, public opinion, etc., Discord is like populated of like those really incredible, I guess, like, yeah, sub communities. I think it's more because these are often private servers. I'm just wondering what's the possibility here. But I'm hoping that Discord is already thinking about how they can position themselves a little bit similar to Reddit on having collaboration with the likes of ChatGPT or Google in order to like train those LLMs, so that we get better, I guess, feedback in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just play devil's advocate. I mean, once you open it up to that sort of level of data scraping within your community, I think it is a bit controversial. I
Yeah,
do
yeah, yeah.
think.
It'll have to be opt-in by the server and
Yeah, and
even
look, I think there's a negative backlash against AI right now. I think some people are over it. Some people don't want it to take their job. They don't want everything to be created by AI. They don't want to even help support the growth of AI. So
well,
I could see a lot of users just being like, whatever, man. Like I just want to use my thing and I don't need AI attached to every app I use.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I don't know.
I agree. I think AI is a bit like the buzz of it. If I see a lot of like that's the bet. The buzz is over. It's no longer like a PR press. If you say we AI powered, I think like now a lot of agency are. So it's not. It's no longer the thing.
Yeah, that's going back to a throwback, and that's a played out. But
Let's
also,
play
guess
that.
what? What we also have an AI component to this. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
whatever, dude. It's all we all do.
Yeah.
All right, well,
That's it.
that's it for this week. We want to do a big thank to Claire Nance for coming on the show, and obviously thanks to all of you listeners for listening. We appreciate you.
That's right. Again, thank you so much to Claire, and we're really excited for next week. We'll see you then.
Edward, please read us out.
And that was Brands in Play. Thank you for joining the podcast where we explore immersive marketing and the people who are leading it. Co-hosted by Albane, Prioux and Nick Hill. Our show today was produced by myself, Evan Regu, with creative direction by Joey Jerder and Javed Kazmi, and audio engineering by Solomon Kiyu, as well as a massive shout out to Ben Caro. Be sure to join us every week for brand new episodes.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views, policies, or positions of host employers. The information shared during this podcast is based on personal experience and publicly available information and is intended for informational purposes only. Any references to specific platforms, companies, or partnerships are made in a personal capacity and do not imply endorsement, partnership, or official association with any organization mentioned.